Hi, I'm Lisa K. Donner, along with Andrew Moran, Sarah Cowgill, Jeff Charles, and Graham Noble. And this is the Conservative Five, Liberty Nation's online TV news program. On today's episode, the Conservative Five takes a dive into escalating gas prices in a segment called Is Biden Fabricating an Energy Crisis? More tragedy at the border, you bet. And we'll talk about it in Collateral Damage of Porous Borders Drug Overdoses. In our segment, Another Summer of Rage, More Bad Lib Strategy, our panel looks at the left's political tactic of intimidation. And we'll take a peek at the lasting effects of the Black Lives Matter movement and what did BLM do for Black Americans? BUPKIS. And finally, backed by popular demand, we'll let off some steam with Just for Fun, Volume 11. All this and more coming up in this edition of the Conservative Five. Americans are struggling, and the pain at the pump is only getting worse. So where's the Biden bunch? They appear to be playing an intense game of point and blame instead of minding the country. These disastrous decisions are deliberate and have put many U.S. energy producers on hold. With lightning speed, we've gone from energy independence to begging for crude. This has to be by design, or else it's rank incompetence. It does appear that today's energy crisis is one that Mr. Biden is orchestrating for a progressive green agenda. Andrew Moran, you wrote a great analysis on what you refer to as Green-mageddon. Extrapolate, please.
Yeah, it's so simply it's this green fetish that's maintained by the president and the Democrats that's exacerbated the country's energy woes. Now, it's not really surprising if you watch the 2020 Republican primaries, or actually the Democratic primaries. The whole time was that Biden was saying he wants to end fossil fuels, he wants to end the oil and gas industry, he wants to stop producing oil. So the latest announcements pretty much confirmed this. His administration announced that they were going to cancel oil and gas leases in Alaska and the Gulf of Mexico. Now, the one in Alaska is probably the far more interesting one, because his reasoning, or the administration's reasoning, was that there wasn't enough industry interest in that area for drilling. But they pretty much knew that, because the main problem whenever anyone wants to develop Alaska, or the specific region of Alaska, is they say it's the environment. And all these environmentalists, all these green zealots, they create all these litigation headaches. They say you're going to kill the beluga whale. They start complaining all the time about everything, and it's very costly for these oil and gas companies. So these companies think, why the heck bother should I drill in the area if all I'm going to have is just these legal headaches for drilling? And I guarantee you, in the coming weeks, heading into the midterm elections, they're going to say, "Oh, the oil and gas industry is sitting on 9,000 leases. Why aren't they drilling?" The problem is the exact same issue. A lot of the oil and gas companies, they can't properly drill because of the whole environmental assessments, the pre-development environmental assessments, the litigation, and then the red tape. And then another issue that's not often talked about is the fact that it's very hard for a lot of oil and gas companies to attract new capital, because a lot of these companies, the whole fossil fuel industry is now a dirty word. Investors don't want to put into it. They want to go into this whole ESG investing and sustainable investing and green and solar panels and windmills. So that's why. So that's the Green-mageddon.
Yeah, Jeff, I'm wondering, can we just muscle our way into forcing the American people to go green? Stop driving a car. Everybody take the subway. Of course, in New York, that means you get pushed off the platform. It seems like we're trying to change the culture by virtue of just muscling through and forcing people to pay $5 a gallon for gasoline.
Yeah, it's either that or you can just run out and get a Tesla. I mean, this is like the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And they even suggest that, just go out and get a Tesla. I'm like, okay, I'll go get a
can everybody afford a Tesla? I'm just asking.
Yeah, no, they can't.
No.
I mean, gas is out of control. I went to fill up my car the other day. I gave him my card. The guy gave me back a loan application to finance the gas. So it's crazy out there. There's no excuse for this. And the thing is, it's a 10-year-old can figure this out. Yes, going green might be a good idea. I'm all for the environment, all that good stuff. It's going to take us decades before we get to the point to where we can not rely on fossil fuels to drive and to have transportation. So let's work towards that. But in the meantime, let's drill and drill and drill until we get to that point. I just saw the entire problem just now. If I can figure this out, if a 10-year-old can figure this out, The Biden administration could figure this out. So I'm with you, Lisa. This is not incompetence. This is being done deliberately, maybe to make us cry out for more green energy. I don't know what they're trying to do, but Biden is having his, let them eat cake moment. But instead it's, let them pay $1 million at the tank.
Yeah, and the problem we have, Sarah, is that you've got a situation where everybody is to blame, but the Biden administration. I remember, back in the day, Democrats like Harry S. Truman, where the buck stops here, right? Well, the buck with Biden seems to stop with Putin, the gasoline companies, everybody else is at fault, and he had nothing to do with this.
He's a point and blame kind of guy. And I'm not even sure he knows he's pointing and blaming. That's another problem with this administration. And by the way, I have to point out that Andrew said Biden and fetish in the same sentence, and it took me a while to get over that. So, and then I also want to nominate Jeff Charles for president. I live in the middle of the country, and people here, number one, we're a lot of farming and agriculture, and we're a lot of ranching and cattle, and that's the industry around here. You think they can afford diesel to get into the field, to get out of the field? They're hurting. And if they don't make money, you guys don't eat on the East Coast or in Florida or in Texas. Well, Texas will, but the rest of us kind of are the breadbasket for a lot of this country. And we can't afford gas. And that's what I hear the most in the Midwest. Gas, pain at the pump, pain at the pump.
Andrew, you're a pretty environmentally Graham, you're a pretty environmentally conscious guy. Yeah, I'm sure you are too, Andrew. No.
Not really.
But I know you are, Graham. But how does this strike you? Just ram this stuff down our throat and force Americans to, pay ridiculous prices. I mean, just 2 years ago, it was $2 a gallon. I remember driving through Florida and saying to my husband, Tim, look, it's like $1.99, $1.98, $1.87.
Well, as someone who actually is environmentally conscious, and I try to do my bit to, recycle and to use sustainable materials, and I do all of that kind of stuff, absolutely. And what annoys me, of course, is that this whole green agenda is not really about saving the environment. That's nonsense. The green agenda is about taking control of the entire economy. But here's the thing.
Well, wait, let me ask you, is it taking control of the entire economy, or is it taking control of the people? Isn't that the end game?
That's funny you should say that, Lisa, because I was just about to make that very point, is that it's not so much about pushing us all into buying electric cars or all of that kind of stuff, or bringing down the fossil fuel industry. And of course, that's all part of it. Absolutely. That's true. But the deeper agenda here is controlling people and taking away their freedom, because after all, if you make it so that a very large number of Americans can barely afford to drive their cars anywhere because they just can't afford to put gas in the tank, what are you doing? You are depriving them of their freedom. You are controlling them. You're almost, it's almost like you're keeping them prisoner in their own homes. So you're absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head there, Lisa, with that one.
Andrew, you're our economic guru, but this kind of thing, this whole green agenda really hurts the poor people. It really hurts those on fixed incomes, really hurts the Social Security people, the veterans. Not to mention everybody's 401k is now a 301k.
Well, unless you bought energy stocks, as I told everyone a long time ago. But I'm going to touch your point for 1 second, but I also want to touch upon what Jeff said. He said it's going to take decades for the whole green energy to succeed. The problem is that anyone who's serious understands that the whole world is not going to rely on green energy for its energy needs. It's not going to rely on hydrogen. It's not going to rely on solar panels and windmills. It's never going to happen. Even the IEA, they came out a couple of months ago and they said that, okay, we think that fossil fuels are still going to represent about at least 1/3 of all energy consumption. Now, to touch upon your point, Lisa, yeah, you're absolutely correct. I mean, a lot of people are at fixed incomes, and they can't handle this volatility, because it's not only gasoline that's so high; it's everything else that's throughout the economy, as Sarah mentioned. You have higher gas prices, and then we have higher gas prices. It costs more to produce food, costs more to transport that food. Everything is up across the board, and it's not just one specific thing that Biden thought it was going to be. And that's why I think he doubled down his whole green energy agenda during the campaign, because he never had the foresight to see the problems festering in the whole energy crisis that happened not only in the United States, but across the globe.
Yeah, and Sarah, you make a fair point. I mean, unless I'm wrong, I don't believe the tractors run on solar power. They run on diesel. So if the farmer out by you is, on the back 40 with his tractor, and he's paying double what he was paying, just a couple of years ago, you better bet we're going to be charged more for our food.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, where else are they going to take it? They can't just lose the family farm because they want to make sure the costs are okay. Everything is going to go up. Everything has got to go up to sustain the gas prices. And I just want to make one random point for the greenies who think, oh, well, we're renewable and sustainable. Windmills aren't recyclable. Guess what happens to them when they're done and out of service? They go to the landfill. So really, I mean, if they're going to come up with this big sustainable package of beauty and love for all of us, well, then they better start with some freaking windmills and do them better.
Also, if I add one random fact too, is that if you look at the gas prices and diesel prices, the gap has never been higher. That the gap is at an all-time high. Yeah. Refineries buy $100 a barrel, and they charge $150 to sell it back to companies or consumers. So this whole diesel, I mean, I think that's the biggest story more than gas prices, how high that is skyrocketing and how that affects industry, transportation, freight, farming, everything.
There's one person who can solve this for us, though, ladies and gentlemen. According to Eric Swalwell, his 4-year-old boy is very concerned about gun violence at the moment. So that means he is a deep thinker. I'm sure once he's solved the gun issue, he can move on to getting us out of our environmental problems.
I just want to know if that's the child that he had with his wife or with the Chinese spy.
Oh, hi-oh.
Yeah, that's about right. Well, I'm sort of wondering how far will Americans allow the green push before they shove back? And will that shove occur at the polls in November? Could be fun. Thanks, panel. Under the Biden administration, records of the worst kind are being set that affect every American every day. But one that is not on every nightly news station is the soaring number of U.S. overdose deaths. In 2021, the U.S. experienced roughly one unintended drug-related death every 5 minutes. Is the Biden administration capable of seriously addressing this growing problem? And if so, how? Sarah Girl, I do believe you have a good place for the Biden bunch to start.
I do at that. Shut the border down. The Biden group is talking about how we're going to handle this, even though they're not doing a lot of public discussion on it. They just do enough to keep people from saying, how come you're not doing anything? And what they want to do is they have said, we've got to slow or stop the supply chain. Well, the supply chain, fentanyl is made in China relatively cheaply. It's a very cheap, very powerful drug. And then it gets cut into drugs. And then the borders open. And so the cartels are just walking over to the United States with these drugs. In 2020, 249 pounds of drugs laced with fentanyl were confiscated. In 2021, it was 649, which is an increase of 233%. To put that into perspective, though, that much fentanyl would kill every person in this nation 4 or 5 times over. That's how lethal that stuff is. And even though it seems like it's just a drug-related problem, it's not. It's an everyday, everybody-related problem. And it's deadly, And this administration is refusing to even look at it as anything more than just some kind of little annoyance that's not making the nightly news.
Well, I do want to point out that fentanyl, the medicinal use of fentanyl is actually really important. I mean, it has helped a lot of people with pain, and it really has.
It was designed as a cancer drug, but it's so easily to make, and it's so easy to get into other things. And, it's synthetic. It's not like they're out picking poppies. It's synthetic. It's easy to replicate, and it's so lethal. It's 80 times more powerful than morphine.
If I may add a point, though, is that if you take fentanyl for more than 30 days, your body becomes really dependent, and doctors will only prescribe that during your stay in a hospital as you try to treat it. But after that, they say, okay, not my problem anymore, and they won't do anything about it, which suggests that this is more of a public health crisis than anything else. I mean, I agree, stop the border, but I think it was a Chinese government that recently said, you have to solve that demand problem. We'll produce it, but if there's no demand, then of course it's not going to happen. I mean, we're not going to produce it anymore. So you solve the public health crisis, you can pretty much, reduce fentanyl deaths.
Yeah, well, it's highly addictive, and so when you get a hold of that, or somebody who thinks they're just buying meth or cocaine, and they just want their drug of choice, they get a hold of this fentanyl laced stuff. It's highly addictive, and if it doesn't kill them, they're jonesing for more, and so that is keeping that supply chain open.
Well, it shows. I mean, this shows that open borders policies are deadly. Just even beyond the crime, this is an issue. And the thing is, with the fentanyl made up 60% of overdose deaths last year. It's crazy. And we had record numbers last year, and unfortunately, it might get worse this year. This administration wanted to remove Title 42 restrictions without having a plan in place. Even Democrats were criticizing Biden for that. It is absolutely ridiculous. He has emboldened these cartels to the point that they've even carried out murders on U.S. soil under this administration. That's how emboldened they are. And the thing is, with fentanyl, most of the people who get affected by it or who die by it don't even know that they're ingesting it, because just like you said, Sarah, they're lacing heroin, methamphetamine, even weed, they're lacing with this drug specifically to kill Americans. So to me, it's like I keep looking at this and I keep getting angry. And I'm like, how many people have to die before the White House actually decides to do something substantive about it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm wondering what is the positive politics of this that the Biden administration just lets this go, Graham? I mean, this is Mr. Compassion, Mr. Unity, Mr. I care about you, but the facts are that these kids are dying at an alarming rate.
Yeah, I mean, there's no upside. There's no political upside to the to allowing this problem to continue, other than it remains a problem. It remains just one more thing that Democrats hope that they can somehow pin on the failures of the Republican Party. That's often what happens with these huge issues. It's always the same way. The Democrats do not want to solve problems. They never have. They've wanted issues on which to campaign and things to complain about, and also issues to just justify spending more money, because that's obviously always their complaint whenever there's a big societal issue or a big political problem. They say, well, the way we solve it is to pour more money into it and create some commissions and focus groups and all this other kind of stuff. And that's really so. What is the political upside to the Biden administration for doing this? No, there is none, other than it's just another issue to talk about.
But Sarah's point was good, and anybody who wants to take it, there is a ripple effect. I mean, you leave the border open and myriad bad things cascade from that, right? You're suddenly busing and flying people into strange communities where they have no connection or very little connection, if any. You've got a drug problem. You've got, the Border Patrol, National Guard dying in the Rio Grande. The guy just went under. There's kids unaccompanied. There is just a cascade of issues. And this is a really bad one affecting our young people.
Well, look at it
the
this
Biden
way, Lisa.
administration knows that the activist media is not going to hold him to account for this. At first, they were criticizing him a little bit, but they're not highlighting this stuff. Even the reports I saw last year talking about record level overdose deaths, very few of them mentioned the border issue. But however, I think he's miscalculating, because I think Americans are still seeing that this migrant crisis, this ongoing issue, which is just going to get worse after Title 42 gets lifted, if that does happen, people are going to see it anyway. They're dealing with the consequences of it. So they can't hide it forever.
Well, look at it this way. By the end of our discussion about this, about 10 minutes or so, 2 people have died statistically.
And not to mention the economic ramifications, Andrew.
I made this point earlier, though, but I mean, if the best thing to do is just focus on the demand side of this problem. Once more doctors or more patients start tackling this issue, then you're going to have less overdose deaths. Another thing too, I have to touch upon Graham's argument about the Democrats. Republicans have championed the war on drugs for so long, for decades, and they never solved the problem either. This is just another facet of the war on drugs, and government intervention, militarization of this drug war. It's not going to solve the problem either. I'm not a public policy maker, so I don't think I have all the solutions. But if it's just more government imposed laws and sanctions, and doing whatever the state does, they're not going to solve the issue either. So unfortunately, when Sarah says 2 people died in 10 minutes, that's been the case for a long time coming, unfortunately.
Yeah, except for Andrew, look at it this way as well. This isn't your daddy's drug. This isn't, the 60s, 70s, and 80s recreational users. This stuff is lethal. I mean, you might have gotten addicted to cocaine, but now it's going to kill you.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say that I'm in my 60s, and I feel like I've seen quite a trajectory. I mean, when I was in college, weed was big, and then in the 80s, cocaine was big, and then it got to be meth and smoking crack, and now we're down to fentanyl. It just seems like there's always a designer drug waiting in the wings to kill our kids.
Well, I did see an interesting statistic, though. It was looking at states that legalized marijuana and then compared it to fentanyl deaths. Now, whether it's cause and effect or not, who knows? But it was still interesting. They found that fentanyl overdose deaths were lower in states that had legalized marijuana. So
Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, well, who knows? Anyway, 'tis a sad state of affairs when grocery store shelves are empty due to supply chain issues. Yet illegal drugs are shipped professionally, strategically, and swiftly. Business as usual on the southern U.S.-Mexican border, one might say. Thanks, panel. We've made it through the so-called summer of love after the George Floyd mess back in 2020. From riots, arson, assaults, and police, you name it. We survived it. And now the left is threatening a repeat. Only this time they've aptly named it the Summer of Rage. A thinking person might ask if this is the best strategy for creating change in society. The answer would be, well, no, it is not. Americans do not generally respond with compliance when confronted by bullies. Just ask King George III. Graham, you're our non-compliant, one of our non-compliant people. We've covered this whisper campaign to rev up the violence from every angle. What do you make of this strategy? And do you believe, as I do, that it just might fail?
Well, of course, yes. Full disclosure, I am rather fond of non-compliance in general, but here's what I think about this. I actually believe that the left will achieve its aim through violence, but here's why. We all know the adage, never let a crisis go to waste. The left uses violence not so much as a way to get what it wants, because that's not very effective. Most Americans, as you said, are turned off by riots, destruction, and politically motivated violence. But no, the left uses violence as a way of prolonging a crisis. In the immediate aftermath of George Floyd's death, there was a short window of opportunity for a bipartisan discussion about police tactics and how certain police forces interact with the Black communities they police. The left, I believe, did not want that coming together. So they orchestrated and ginned up violence, anger, mayhem, and to drive both political sides back to their respective corners. So Will the summer of rage over abortion issue achieve its goal? Yes, it will, because that goal is not to affect a satisfactory legal or political outcome. It's to perpetuate the division, the finger pointing, the animus between the two political sides.
Yeah,
Jeff,
keep it in the news. That's exactly, Graham, you're spot on with that. I couldn't come up with anything better. Keep it in the news.
Jeff, do you think that the summer of rage is actually going to happen? You see that rolling down the tracks, especially with the abortion leak thing?
I'm a little skeptical. If it does, it won't be like it was after George Floyd. And by the way, I agree with you, Graham, because that's what I was saying too. I mean, what was the attention on right after the footage went viral? This was horrible. Everybody was angry about it, right and left, and they wanted something done. Then the riots happened, and that distracted from what was going on. So yeah, the media and the Democrats don't want the police brutality issue to go away because they love it. But with this whole summer of rage, there might be some violence. I'm not going to say there won't be any, but I don't think it'll be as widespread as they want us to think. I think a lot of this is kind of what Graham is saying, but I think a lot of this they want to intimidate a little bit. But even that's not going to work. I mean, the law is going to be the law. The Supreme Court is going to rule the way they rule. Red states will pass the laws that they pass. And yes, I mean, and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis already passed a law against, or the Florida State Legislature passed a law against protesting in front of people's homes. So there is going to be a reaction to this, and he's taking preemptive action. But I don't think this is going to be as crazy as they want us to think. I think they're hyping it up a little bit.
Well, Sarah, politically speaking, violence is not a game-winning tactic for Americans. If you look at what happened in the 60s and 70s, that especially, the turn of that decade, you had Nixon in 68 and then Nixon again in 72, winning 49 states out of 50 in a law and order platform.
Yep. And because people don't like to believe that they're always going to be unsafe. This country obviously has advances in keeping their people safe. And whether or not we like civil unrest in the streets, to make a point, we don't like it when it comes to, say, our front yard or flipping our car over when we're driving down the street in Portland. That's not cool. It's never going to be cool. And whether or not they agree with the message, they're going to vote against anybody who promotes it. So I think, you're dead right. If the people are looking to keep things in the news, but not necessarily, have violence where they're lighting federal buildings on fire.
And we have to say that when it comes to the violence, it's again the poor people who suffer, right, Andrew? I mean, they're the ones where the businesses get closed down in the downtown areas, and they have to shut down and let their people go and try to keep going in the midst of murder and mayhem.
Yeah, I find it interesting when the Black Lives Matter protests, or when they rioted and they started dismantling or smashing windows of small businesses belonging to Black people. So yeah, you're absolutely right how it affects poor people the most. These small business owners, because a company, let's say, I don't know, Walgreens or CVS, they have insurance, they put this money into their budgets, they expect these things, but it's these smaller companies that cannot. I mean, you see right now during this whole democide occurring against small businesses now, they can't afford a lot of the things happening in this economy. So yeah, if the riot does happen, they hurt the most. Point out one thing too. When Sarah says, nationally it doesn't happen, you have to have a law and order platform. You have to remember, after George Floyd, a lot of cities started slashing police budgets, which of course resulted in higher crime. And they listened to their demands. But what's also interesting too is a few months after that, I think it was just last November, there were a lot of ballot issues being put for voters saying, oh, would you want to cut police budgets, for such and such and such? And what happened? A lot of voters said, no, we don't want to slash police budgets. There were, of course, a couple of anomalies, but for the most part, people said no. And one more thing too, Tim made an excellent point about whole leftist riots and strategy. He was right when he said the only reason why the left does this is because they can't engage and articulate their positions in a peaceful manner. That's why they censor their opponents. That's why they use violence, because they can't have a debate of ideas, because they lose, because they can't do it.
Yeah, I think a couple of points there. One, what you were saying there, Andrew, is that, yes, you see, this is how I actually feel about it. Does political violence achieve a goal? Yes, it does achieve the goal of keeping the issue a contentious one. But you're right. You see, after the George Floyd riots, there was a knee-jerk reaction at the local levels. And so for a while, it seemed like those riots and that chaos and that mayhem actually achieved an end, but it didn't, because it backfired, because crime went up and now people turned against it. So yes, indeed, like at the end of the day in this country, the way most Americans feel about, political violence and civil unrest, it never achieves the long-term goals that they at least claim that they want to achieve.
Exactly. And an argument can be made that those who are the most violent lose not only at the ballot box, but also in the hearts and minds of Americans.
Absolutely.
I guess the left hasn't figured that out yet. Thanks, panel. It's been 2 years since Black Lives Matter dominated the airwaves. It was a campaign that coaxed and inspired the kind of civil unrest that the nation hadn't really witnessed in decades. It seemed if you weren't Black or minority, well, you were automatically a racist, whether you knew it or not. But here we are now, and people want to know what impact, if any, BLM had on the average Black American. Good question. Liberty Nation's Jeff Charles did a deep dive into the aftermath of the BLM movement. What, pray tell, did you find, Jeffrey?
Black Lives Matter is the grip that keeps on grifting. And the only Black people that have benefited were the Black people that work for the organization. And I'm speaking specifically about the global organization. But really, when you take a look at it, like you said, it's been 2 years. In Minneapolis, that rioting was the worst riot next to the LA riots. And by the way, it took LA decades to recover from that. Yeah. It's going to take Minneapolis and all of the other cities that had serious rioting, it's going to take them decades to recover from that. Over $500,000 in damage in Minneapolis alone. And who does that affect the most? It affects Black people the most, especially Black businesses. 1,500 Black businesses in Minneapolis were devastated. Many of those had to shut down completely. Lives were destroyed. And I'm not even talking about the people who were killed. So that's one impact that Black Lives Matter had. But we also talk about the defund the police movement, where they pressured cities all across the nation to slash their police budgets. And in many cases, that resulted in fewer police officers patrolling the streets, which, according to a Gallup poll, 81% of Black people didn't want that, never wanted that. But these people don't care what Black people want. I don't even think they even talk to regular black people like that. So you have all this damage done. You got skyrocketing crime rates because of fewer police. Who are most of the victims? You guessed it, Black people.
Black people.
So
right.
Black Lives Matter has been a net negative for the Black community. And I really hope that these investigations and reports end up putting them out of business, because they haven't done anything good. And in my estimation, the Black Lives Matter global organization is nothing more than white progressives in political blackface. And that's what this shows. They've done nothing, very little positive for the Black community. Maybe some of the local chapters have done some positive stuff, but the global organization, no, it's been a net negative. And honestly, Black lives have been destroyed and killed because of this organization.
Well, apparently the head of Black Lives Matter said that it's 90 million, in her words, white guilt money. It was mistakenly used improperly. Now, there's a difference between a mistake and greed. You know, when you spend $1 million personally or $6 million on a home for your family, that's not a mistake. That's just greed. You know, and I'm wondering if the people, I don't know, maybe it was all white guilt money. Maybe it was. It was. Okay. Most of the money they got were from well-meaning white progressives who saw what happened to George Floyd, and they thought that by giving to this organization, they were going to help Black people. So white guilt actually runs pretty deep. I mean, people say it as a joke, but Shelby still wrote about this. It is a real thing, and the left has excelled at capitalizing on it and using it to manipulate well-meaning folks. So, Graham, how do you feel about all this white guilt money being used inappropriately, I think is safe to say?
Well, I think it's an incredible achievement on the part of organizations like Black Lives Matter and other people going back before the days of Black Lives Matter, going back to people like Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, all of these people who have managed to very effectively convince a lot of white, and again, white progressives. We're not talking about white conservatives, because conservatives have an entirely different outlook on race relations. They're much more interested in, let's not focus on race, let's focus on character and values. But left wingers can't do that. And it's incredible how decades of pounding into the heads of white progressives how guilty they should feel about being white is paid off, literally has paid off. It's paid enormous dividends. But I read the other day an interesting little factoid, which of course may or may not be true, because I read it on social media. So who knows if it's actually true? Jeff may know this better than me. That in fact, Black Lives Matter, I guess Patrisse Cullors' family got about 4 times more money from Black Lives Matter than the Trayvon Martin Foundation, which I found, kind of staggeringly poignant, because the Trayvon Martin shooting was what started Black Lives Matter.
I'm wondering if all of this emphasis on the color of someone's skin has not really created a worse environment in this country. And I specifically point to the what happened in Buffalo, New York this week, with the gunning down of all those Black people by that fellow who apparently has a manifesto of white racist comments, whatever. He's 18 years old. So he was, 16 when the George Floyd thing happened? Mm-hmm. And he was, and I always thought Barack Obama's take on race was kind of troubling. Mm-hmm. It wasn't very healing, in my opinion. And if you go back to those years, this kid was maybe, 12, 10, 8. His whole life, race has been like a major issue. And, he said he was radicalized online, but I'm just wondering if we're creating a culture of racism in this country that is making the situation worse. Sarah?
I think 100% we have done nothing but that since the Obama administration. One of, as a former speechwriter, I really pay attention to the words, and I can somewhat repeat while they're still saying their speeches, because I know what they're going to say. What I noticed about the Obama administration, he would go and make a speech to whatever group, whether it was Hispanics, whether it was Black people, whether it was Asian, Native American. He would insert that, specific race into the same speech and say, we're not taking it anymore. We just can't take this anymore. And he really banged the drum and got every person of color in every different spice of life, in every vocation. And, whether or not, whatever color you were, if you weren't pasty white, you're the enemy. And he banged that into everybody's head for 8 years. So there's a lot of kids that grew up not knowing what it was like before the Obama administration, when things were a lot calmer when it came to race relations. And now they've just been even more divisive than ever. Yeah, it's not going to get better.
Did they remember that Martin Luther King said we want to judge people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin? It seems like everything's been turned upside down.
Yeah, they don't care. That's not part of their. They'll claim Martin Luther King as, the greatest advocate and the guy who created change in civil rights, and they will be correct. But they also don't tell you that Martin Luther King was conservative and that he did not believe in violent protesting. That would have been a Malcolm X kind of strategy.
Right.
King was more along the lines as like, let's just show that we have, peace through strength. And that's what he did. And that's been thrown out the window. The baby and the bathwater all went out the window.
I think it's fair to go ahead, Graham.
I'm sorry. I was going to say I'm going to try to inject a bit of optimism into this, because here's the thing: even though I don't take issue with anything anyone on the panel has said, I live in South Mississippi now, and I like it here, and I am surrounded by Black people, and I do like to go to my local bar and have a beer now and again, as some of you know, and my local bar actually is a pretty kind of I guess what you might call a real typical deep South redneck bar. There's a big Gadsden flag on the wall, and there are plenty of Black people who go in there and drink, and we all get along fine. And one thing I have to say is that we should always remember, we should always keep in perspective that the radicals behind organizations like BLM are still a minority. And I believe that the majority of Black people in this country do not give a fig about Black Lives Matter. They do not feel that they're oppressed. They do not hate white people. And I believe that actually the further to the extreme that organizations that, like BLM go, the more and more Black people will turn their backs on them. And so, I don't believe that we're heading for any kind of race war Armageddon type situation.
Well, as I've often said, one of the most racist places I've ever lived was in Boston, Massachusetts. That's not to say it's still that way, but it wasn't in Charlotte, North Carolina, where everybody kind of pretty much got along.
The funny thing is, if you look at it, where the incidences and the violence is taking place, it's in urban environments. We're not the whitest world here in the Midwest. We have Hispanics and Black people and Asians, and that's something we all, I don't know, we turn a blind eye to. We, like Graham says, you sit down and you drink with whoever comes in to drink with you. And I don't see racism here where everybody would assume it would be. I see it in cities. I see it in the big cities where there's an ability to agitate two groups of people and put that on the news. I might be dead wrong, but that's just my observation.
Because there's race baiters out there. And I don't think, and that's the problem with BLM. I wonder if they're just really a bunch of race baiters.
Yeah, I don't think that the Black Lives Matter, at least the leadership, they're not reflective of the regular Black person. The regular Black person is what Graham Noble just described. You don't see most Black people talking about, we have to get rid of the father or whatever, or we have to get into this Marxism stuff and push for the alphabet agenda. No, the only part that represents them is the phrase Black Lives Matter, because they don't like seeing police brutality and they want police reform, not defunding the police, but police reform. So no, they don't really represent most of us at all, even though we all have our disagreements in our community. Those people do not represent the majority of Black folks. They just don't.
Andrew, I'll give you the final word.
Well, I'll just say that the last couple of years proves why I'm small case BLM, not capital BLM, because the Black Lives movement, the original movement had good intentions, and then it metastasized into the Black Lives Matter organization, and grifters are going to grift. They extracted all this money. And I don't have enough time here because I didn't participate much, but two things. MLK, he had his good points, bad points. He was not a conservative. He believed in basic income guarantees. He was a socialist. Malcolm X, he knew about the white guilt. He knew about white progressives, the dangers they pose. Second of all, but when it comes to race obsession, it's happening right now in the schools. You have kids who are divided into different groups. You have slaves and slave owners. You have white kids who are told about having white guilt. You have Black Lives. If you go on Libs of TikTok account, you always see these transgender teachers have Black Lives Matter posters in the background. So this whole race obsession is only going to fester as time goes by, and before you know it, white people are just going to hovel and say I'm sorry every time they wake up. So
an honest look at the organization tells the tale. Unfortunately, BLM became more of a victimizer than a benefactor of the Black community. Thanks, panel. Backed by popular demand, the Conservative Five panel is about to debate the toughest of political predicaments. And so now we are going to play another round of something we call just for fun. Okay, C5 team, are you ready?
Yes.
Everybody, come on. You all ready?
Sure.
Yeah.
We're ready.
Okay, I'm going to call you out one by one. Pick a number from 1 to 5. You get a horrible choice to make. Tell me why you choose that option, and we'll tell you why your choice was wrong. Ready? Graham, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5?
I will go for number 5, please.
Number 5. Well, Jeff's going to love you because he always has his favorite number he wants everybody to stay away from. It's dodgeball day, and Republicans are playing against the Democrats. Would you rather be on the team with Elizabeth Warren and Cory Booker or Mitch McConnell and Mitt Romney? Wow, what a choice. Oh, my gosh.
Good.
Everyone
grief.
else gets to chime in on this one. So the choices are dodgeball, Elizabeth Warren and Cory Booker, or Mitch McConnell and Mitt Romney. Oh,
That's easy. Oh, man, that's easy.
Well, I know the
think
answer.
It's an easy question.
But before I give you the answer, I just want to say, Jeff, the reason why I got your number, white privilege. Just going to throw that in there.
No, you didn't. You didn't get his number.
Oh, I thought I got his number. I was just going to say that's why. If I had got his number, that would have been one.
Oh, here it is. It's white guilt.
Said, that's why you
white guilt.
Anyway, well, for a start, I'm glad this is. What are we playing here? We're playing dodgeball, right? Rather than congressional baseball. So at least we don't have to worry about bringing our bulletproof vest with us. But actually, no, I'm gonna go for, why would you not be wanting to? If you're playing dodgeball, why would you not want to be on a team with a Native American and Spartacus? I mean, how are you going to lose that game? So I'm going to go for I would take Cory Booker and Elizabeth Warren because they're bound to win that. Surely.
Well, I actually have to. I have to agree. I have to agree because I want to blast those nasty little red hurtful balls. Ow! At Mitt Romney.
Okay, well, moving right along there. Let's go to Jeff. What would you remember?
1.
I hate that you took 1. I'm going to take this out on you. Would you rather spend a day in the life? Would you rather spend a day in the life with First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt or Jackie Kennedy? What does that exactly mean? Would you rather spend a day? Oh, in the life of Eleanor Roosevelt or Jackie Kennedy, or with?
I'd say of. Let's go with of. Okay. It makes more sense.
Okay,
so I would be either Eleanor Roosevelt or I would be Jackie Kennedy.
That's what I think. That's what I'm thinking the question says. I did not make these questions, but I'm trying to decipher them.
I guess I'm going to go with Eleanor Roosevelt. I mean, who wants to see their husband get shot? I mean, that had to have been horrible for Jackie. I couldn't even imagine dealing with that.
Yeah, that's not the. What if the day wasn't November 22nd? What if the day?
Yeah, she had many other days.
Oh, it's just one day. Okay. I'm still going to go with Eleanor Roosevelt. I mean, I feel like Eleanor Roosevelt, was trying to do a lot of good with the platform that she had, and it's interesting because her husband was a racist, and she had to convince him to do a lot of the stuff that he did for Black people.
Well, I'm going to be Jackie Kennedy. Let's all go to Paris and wear some Givenchy.
Hey.
Or if you're
I'm not very fashion.
I think she was tough. She's tough.
Who?
Unless I could go horseback riding as Jackie, then maybe I'd do that.
Well, yeah, right out here in Middleburg.
Or if you're Eleanor, you can be in the White House and hold seances and tap into the spirits of the other world.
Oh, that's right.
That sounds fun too.
Right. Yeah. That's very interesting. I don't know. Okay, Graham.
I'm just still imagining Jeff dressed as either one of those two.
You're gonna have nightmares.
Yeah, I can't unsee that.
You can put those big sunglasses on and your pillbox hat. You'll be all set, Jeff. All right, Sarah.
2.
2. Would you rather eat a live cockroach or kiss Nancy Pelosi? Oh, whoa.
Oh, I'd eat the live cockroach any day. I'm add a little salt and down it goes.
Oh.
Why does every Just for Fun segment involve somehow kissing Nancy Pelosi or
Maxine Waters?
Well, because, if there were segments that asked you if you wanted to kiss AOC or Tulsi Gabbard, then
Exactly.
how stupid would that be?
Exactly. No, she's absolutely right.
And we'd never be able to get Andrew to shut up about
It's
it.
supposed to be a tough choice.
All right.
Andrew.
Which one of you is eating the cockroach?
Oh yeah, totally.
Not this guy.
Absolutely.
No, I'll give Nancy a kiss before I eat a cockroach. Can't go there.
Me
At my
too.
supermarket, they
You
sell.
have to use tongue, Lisa. You have to
They
use
sell,
tongue.
they sell energy bars made out of cockroaches.
Oh, is that a Canadian thing? What?
Oh yeah, well yeah, it's made by President's Choice. So yeah, I guess it is a Canadian.
Oh, okay. All right. Andrew, you're up.
3.
Okay. 3. Would you rather listen to a loop of Kamala Harris cackling for 24 hours straight or make out with Joe Biden for 10 minutes?
Oh,
Wow, this is got to be like a Gitmo torture
brutal.
segment. Kamala cackling for 24 straight hours or make out with Biden for 10 minutes.
Well, I guess Kamala Harris, because then you meditate, you close your eyes, you can just drown out that horrific sound. There's actually this YouTube channel called Remix Bros, and they actually have a song or music made from Kamala Harris's cackling.
That's wrong on so many levels.
All right, who else is going with Kamala's cackling?
I'm
Yeah.
gonna go with the cackling.
I'm going with the cackling too, actually.
Yeah, I guess I am too. I don't think I could handle Biden for.
I mean, the way I see it at this point, Kamala Harris has become such a figure of ridicule that, the cackling, it doesn't anger me or upset me to hear her cackling. It just makes me laugh. I mean, if I had to listen to Kamala Harris cackling nonstop for 24 hours, I'd probably just be laughing so hard. That
it is annoying as hell. It's right up there with Hillary's.
But it's the same thing.
It'd have to be drinking.
That's why I call her Black
I'd do
Hillary.
it.
What'd you say, Jeff?
I said it's the same thing. That's why I call her Black Hillary. The cackle is the exact same.
Oh, that's right. You do call her Black Hillary. I forgot about that. Okay. All right. So that leaves me with numero 4. It's Congressional Red Rover Day. Would you rather have Lindsey Graham or Mitt Romney sent right over for a solid clotheslining? Definitely Lindsey Graham. Definitely. I think he's kind of he's definitely an odd duck, but he's a fascinating character. Romney just seems to me like an amazingly insecure human being who can't get over his envy and his jealousy and can't really put all that ugliness aside in favor of other people and other things. But I think Lindsey Graham would be interesting. Anybody else?
They both make me sick.
Wait,
I think I want
to clothesline him or what?
I think I want to clothesline them both.
So I'm going to put you down as a maybe then, Andrew. Okay. Yeah.
If I had the choice to clothesline one of them, I'm going to go with Romney, mainly because my mom has a crush on Lindsey Graham. And I know, but I tried to tell her. She ain't trying to hear it.
Well, I was actually picking the one I preferred, but you're right.
Yeah.
If I had to clothesline them, it would be Romney.
When you're talking about clothesline, are you talking about that wrestling move where you smack them? Oh, okay, all right, okay.
Did you ever play Red Rover?
No, I don't know the wrestling.
Anybody?
Move.
If I did, I can't remember it. I mean,
it's a bunch of kids. You hold hands and you say Red Rover, send someone right over, and they try to bust through the line and make you lose your grip. Yeah. And if you clothesline them, then they are on your team. That's eventually.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm. Yeah,
and I think Mitt Romney's
anybody
problem
have a
now.
Childhood? Did anyone have a childhood?
Yes, but it was a long time ago.
But I think Mitt Romney's problem is that he's got what I call never been president-itis, and basically, there's him, there's John McCain, there's Hillary Clinton. They were all the same. These people who continuously ran for president over and over again and failed over and over again just became bitter and it seemed like they then devoted the rest of their political careers, what was left of them, to just being a total thorn in the side of everybody else.
That's a really good point. We need a few more Bob Doles who lost and basically went, get on with my life. I mean, he was, I gave it a shot.
Mm-hmm.
And
Bob Dole won't run for president again. Bob Dole won't run for president once.
Well, you won't see the likes of Bob Dole.
There's Andrew. Where have you been?
All right. Well, thanks for playing along. And as always, drop a suggestion in the comments section of YouTube, Facebook, or our new Substack page. We try to keep comments off of LN for obvious reasons. Thanks, folks. That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform, YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble. We're on them all. As well, Liberty Nation has its own Roku channel where you can see all of our TV productions. Thanks for tuning in. And remember, surf on over to libertynation.com. Join us in the member zone, just $17.76 for the year. Special thanks to our fantastic editor and post coordinator, Frank DiOrio, and our executive producer, Sarah Cowgill. I'm Lisa K. Donner, editor-in-chief. Thanks for joining us today. This has been a production of libertynation.com, where truth is making a comeback.